Let's face it, most people are too scared to express their dislike for you directly. Rather, they conceal themselves beneath false politeness, phony grins, and empty compliments. I've been in that situation too, believing someone to be a buddy just to discover they were actually plotting my demise. It's harsh, but the reality is that you will waste time and effort on individuals who, deep down, don't understand you if you don't see the warning signs. Let's get past the bullshit and discuss the telltale signals that someone despises you but is trying to hide it. Even though you may not like what you hear, accepting the facts is preferable to living in denial. It will be a first-person story with examples from real life. 1. They constantly make fun of your shortcomings. Everyone knows someone who enjoys making jokes, especially when they are directed at you. "I'm only kidding with you," they'll remark as they smile and pick at your eccentricities, errors, and little flaws. Let's not fool ourselves. These jokes are frequently more than light-hearted conversation, even though they initially appear innocent. They are well-planned jabs that are deftly presented as humor and are intended to gradually undermine your self-esteem. I was close to someone once who seemed to always have something to say about me, including my appearance, my speech, and even the projects I was working on. I dismissed it at first, assuming it was all in good humor, but as time passed, I became aware of a pattern. The jokes consistently targeted my perceived flaws rather than my virtues. Shortly after, I began to question whether I was the issue and whether these imperfections were as obvious as they appeared to be. This is where the disagreement begins. Those who constantly make fun of your shortcomings aren't being kind. Rather, they're trying to gauge how much you'll tolerate. They use it as a tactful kind of manipulation to maintain your subordination while establishing their control. Without a doubt, they are telling you that you are beneath them. What's the sneakiest part? They get away with it because we've been taught that we're the ones who are flawed if we can't handle a joke. Let's change that script, though. I'm here to inform you that when a joke goes too far, it's perfectly acceptable to defend yourself. It's actually necessary. You should be with individuals that make you feel good, not people who make fun of you for no other reason. Genuine friends praise your strengths and support you in overcoming your shortcomings without making fun of you. They don't need to point out your shortcomings in order to feel better about themselves. People who tolerate these jokes because they believe it's easier to maintain harmony than to cause a stir are something I've witnessed repeatedly. Allowing someone to treat you disrespectfully, even in fun, is a slippery slope. But here's the real deal. Small remarks at first, but eventually those jokes can wear you down and cause you to doubt your value. And because you didn't want to come across as overly sensitive, they will keep pushing until you start to doubt yourself the more you let it. This was something I had to learn the hard way. I understood that by laughing with them, I was allowing them to continue. I participated in my own disdain. I didn't see a change in how they treated me or how I perceived myself until I began to push back and create boundaries. I took ownership of my story and stopped allowing their words to define who I was. So my advice is to not simply laugh it off the next time someone makes fun of you. Is this actually humorous, or is there something more going on here? Ask yourself. And don't be scared to confront them if the latter is the response. It could cause discomfort or possibly lead to the friendship's demise. However, your dignity is far more valuable than someone else's misplaced sense of humor. Ultimately, life is too short to spend it with people who don't appreciate you. It's time to make new friends if their definition of friendship is always pointing out your shortcomings. It will never be necessary for those who genuinely care about you to put you down in order to feel good about themselves. Therefore, don't let anyone make fun of you. Speak up and stand tall. 2. Their compliments are insulting and hurtful. We've all experienced it. You receive a compliment from someone, but instead of feeling happy, you feel as like you've just been slapped with a velvet glove. It's the type of compliment that causes you to pause and consider if it was an insult or a compliment. The ugly truth is that it's frequently a combination of both. People can subtly and almost covertly undermine you while feigning kindness by using these backhanded compliments. The contentious aspect of this situation is that these purported praises are tainted with a covert motive. They are intended to maintain you where you are, not to elevate you. The person offering the compliment is using it as a power move to make you question your own skills and establish their dominance. "I see you trying, but you'll never be as good as me," they say. It is poisonous, yet it is so attractively packaged that you hardly notice it. Let's face it, backhanded complimenters frequently have insecurities themselves. They use these cunning small jabs to keep you doubting yourself and to make sure you don't become too successful because they are afraid of your potential and your strengths. They seem to be holding you down with one hand while giving you a back pat. We've all done it at some point, which makes it even more contentious. Perhaps unintentionally, we have all allowed our fears to show via a compliment intended to remind someone else of their position. The underlying message is that you don't have to put up with this covert animosity. You have the ability to disregard it and perceive it for what it is, a reflection of their own fears rather than a gauge of your value. You don't have to take statements like, "You're smarter than you look," or "This is good considering you're new at this," at face value. Even if it causes awkwardness, call it out for what it is. Because if you don't, you're giving them the authority to choose how you view yourself, and you should never give someone that kind of power. These praises are a mirror reflecting someone else's anxieties, and I've learnt to see that. And it loses its sting when viewed in that light. Since their remarks ultimately reveal more about them than they ever would about you, you can almost laugh it off rather than internalize it. When you receive a backhanded compliment, you should do the following. For example, "I don't tolerate it." "Thanks, but what do you mean by that?" is how I'll answer. It puts them on the position, and more often than not, pushes them to face the insult concealed in their remarks. It's remarkable how quickly their tune changes when they realize you're not playing their game. The lesson is to not let the covert negativity of others to determine who you are. Remember that your value is unquestionable, regardless of whether it's a well-meaning friend, a jealous coworker, or even a relative. Praise should make you feel better, not worse. It's time to consider someone's motives if their statements make you doubt yourself. Life is too short to squander on those who are incapable of truly applauding your accomplishments. Be in the company of people that value you and aren't hesitant to express it to you without any conditions. 3. They quietly leave you out of plans. Realizing that your so-called friends accidentally forgot to invite you to that dinner, that party, or that weekend vacation is one of the small things that hurts the most. They'll claim it was a last-minute item, that it was an oversight, or worse, that you were too busy anyhow. Let's face it though, these aren't coincidences. This is the most subtle kind of social isolation and a blatant indication that you are not as valuable as you believe yourself to be. This is something I've experienced far too often. One weekend, I was looking through my phone when I noticed photos of a bunch of friends enjoying themselves at an event that I would have wanted to go to. The worst part, I didn't hear about it from anyone before. There were plenty of excuses when I brought it up later, such as, "Oh, we thought you were busy," or "It was such a last-minute plan." But I knew the truth in my heart. They would have made sure I know if they wanted me there. This is where the disagreement arises, since this type of exclusion is intentional rather than careless. It's a method of communicating without using words. Although they don't want you there, they lack the courage to confront you about it. Rather, they hope you will quietly leave the group without making a fuss. It's cowardly and passive-aggressive, but it's also very prevalent. Because it's easier to act as though it doesn't exist, people don't discuss this topic very often. Instead of confronting the unpleasant reality of being driven out, it is simpler to accept the justifications and persuade oneself that it was truly only an error. The problem is that if you continue to accept such justifications, you're allowing them to continue to exclude you. Instead of taking charge of your own story, you're letting them determine where you fit into their lives. This was something I had to learn the hard way. I remained silent for a long, accepting those unintentional exclusions in the hopes that I could be included the next time. However, I later came to the realization that by remaining mute, I was enabling myself to be viewed as an afterthought. I therefore took a radical stance and began criticizing them. "Hey, I noticed you guys went out last weekend. Why wasn't I invited?" is what I would say. Although it was difficult and undoubtedly embarrassing, it also made them face their actions. And you know what? The dynamics shifted. The bottom line was clear. I wasn't going to let them leave me out without a fight. Some folks became defensive, while others made an effort to make amends. Here's the underlying message. No matter how last minute the plan is, people will make the effort to include you if they want you in their lives. And it's time to reconsider the importance of those relationships if they don't. You should be with people that don't make you feel like you're always trying to get their attention or their approval. Since they truly love your company, true friends make sure you're there and don't forget to invite you. Therefore, don't ignore it if you find yourself being gently left out of plans. Even if the answers aren't what you want to hear, face it, ask the difficult questions, and be ready for them. Because knowing where you really stand is ultimately preferable to wondering why you were excluded once more. Additionally, keep in mind that you are a priority and not a backup plan. Be in the company of people who treat you with respect. 4. Only when it comes to you are they preoccupied. "I'm so busy these days. Sorry I can't hang out," is a common refrain. After all, who isn't busy? So it's the ideal excuse. What occurs, though, when you begin to see a pattern? When it comes to you, they are suddenly overloaded, even if they are constantly ready for others, sharing photos of their adventures and catching up with pals they share. The harsh reality is that they are simply too busy for you, not too busy themselves. More often than I'd like to admit, I've found myself in that annoying circumstance. I recall contacting a person with whom I had once been close in an attempt to arrange a catch-up time. They would always come up with an excuse when I made a suggestion, such as, "I'm working late," "I have a lot on my plate," or "maybe next week." In the meantime, I would witness them enjoying themselves while interacting with others, somehow managing to find time for everyone but me. Seeing the pattern took me longer than I'd like to acknowledge. They were making it very evident that I was no longer a top priority in their lives. This is where the problem arises. We have been socialized to believe that being busy is a good excuse to be ignored. Let's face it though, people schedule time for the things and people they care about. It's not about their schedule if they're always busy with you. Rather, it's about their priorities. And that's a difficult pill to chew, because it makes you face the possibility that they value you more than you do. The ugly truth is that using the word busy is frequently a courteous way of expressing that you don't want to spend time with someone. Admitting that they are excluding you from their lives is more difficult for them than blaming it on their schedule. Keeping you at a distance, without having to face the confrontation that would accompany telling you the truth, is accomplished through this passive-aggressive technique. They don't really care about the relationship. They just want to keep you on the hook in case something goes wrong. I've experienced this from both sides. Sometimes I was the one who had to make excuses because I was unsure of how to let someone know that I had outgrown the friendship. But I learnt an important lesson from being the one on the receiving end. Being honest, even if it makes you uncomfortable, is preferable to making excuses. The conversation was difficult, but it was essential when I finally called out my friend for constantly being busy. It provided me with the insight I required to move on and devote my time and energy to relationships in which I felt appreciated. The profound takeaway is that both your time and your energy are valuable. Don't waste it on people who aren't interested in spending time with you. It's time to reevaluate your relationship if the other person is always too busy for you. You should be surrounded by individuals who look forward to seeing you and who actively seek you out in their lives, not just when it suits them, but because they truly like your company. It's critical to acknowledge that relationships and people evolve throughout time. Even when someone has obviously moved on, we occasionally hold on to them out of habit, nostalgia, or a dread of being alone. However, there is power in letting go and realizing that you are worthy of more than someone else's spare time. It's about valuing yourself enough to leave people who don't value you, not about being needy or demanding. 5. Physical touch is something they shun like the plague. Physical contact, or rather the absence of it, is the unspoken issue at hand. Physical contact is a fundamental human interaction that helps people connect and develop trust. We're not just talking about romantic connections here. What does it signify then when someone makes a conscious effort to avoid even the slightest touch? The answer isn't pretty. You should pay attention to them because they're making it obvious that they don't feel comfortable with you. A co-worker of mine used to seem to wince whenever I extended my hand to shake hands or give them a warm pat on the back. I initially believed I was having hallucinations, but I soon realized it wasn't just me. With everyone else, they were affectionate and touchy, but with me, it was as though I had the plague. I quickly came to the conclusion that their avoidance of physical contact was not merely a peculiarity, but rather a conscious attempt to keep me at a distance. Here's the contentious part. Avoiding physical touch on a regular basis indicates a lack of comfort or connection. Physical contact is a normal aspect of human interaction. It's acceptable for some folks to simply not be sentimental. However, it's a warning sign that something's wrong when it's selective, when they're comfortable hugging others, but become rigid around you. Even if they may not express their distaste for you directly, their body language speaks louder than words. We've all been on both sides of the equation, let's face it. Perhaps you've leaned back or avoided a handshake when someone approached too closely because you didn't feel comfortable with them. Or perhaps you've been the one who was flinching and wondered why people always seem to flinch around you. It's awkward, uncomfortable, and frequently indicates that the relationship isn't as solid as you'd like to believe. The deeper reality, however, is that human connection is fundamentally based on physical contact. It's how we demonstrate warmth, empathy, and trust. When someone avoids it with you, they're avoiding intimacy, vulnerability, and proximity in addition to contact. There is obviously a problem in the connection because they are keeping you at arm's length, both literally and figuratively. Even though it can be difficult to acknowledge what these indicators signify, I've learnt to pay attention to them. I once disregarded the warning indications, persuading myself that a person's hesitation to approach was merely a personality characteristic. However, the more I thought about it, the more I understood that it was about our relationship and about me. I was relieved of the frustration of wondering why things felt strange, but it also resulted in some difficult conversations and, in some cases, the breakup of the relationship. The deep message is to pay attention to the signs. Avoiding physical contact with you is more than simply a personal preference. It's a sign of how comfortable and connected they are with you. Do not hesitate to discuss this pattern if you observe it. It could result in a better understanding or show that the relationship isn't as stable as you initially believed. In any case, facing reality is preferable to living in denial. Additionally, keep in mind that you deserve to be in relationships where physical touch is comfortable and natural rather than something to be avoided. These tiny actions, like a warm embrace, a firm handshake, or simply sitting close without feeling. Uncomfortable. Foster connection and trust. Avoiding them on a regular basis indicates that something is amiss. Ask the difficult questions and, if required, make the difficult choices without fear. Being surrounded by individuals who keep you at a distance, both literally and figuratively, is not necessary since life is too short. 6. When you need help, they vanish. Let's face it, nothing shows a relationship's actual character more than a crisis. You discover who your true friends are when times are hard. When someone disappears when you need them the most. What does that say about them? It's a clear indication that they don't care as much about you as you may have assumed, not just a sign of flakiness. And let's be honest, it's not only hurtful, but also betraying when someone disappears when you're at your lowest. During a really trying time in my life, I discovered this the hard way. I was coping with a serious personal problem that completely rocked my world. I naturally resorted to my close friends in the hopes of receiving some kind of support, even if it was only a brief phone call or text. But you know what? Crickets. Suddenly, the individuals I believed would support me had every possible excuse. I'm so busy at work. I'm sorry, I'm just really busy right now. And I'll check in with you later. As a spoiler, they never did. The contentious part is that while people love to say they will always be there for you, many of them are only there for the good moments when the chips are down. They will celebrate your life's milestones, laugh with you, and go out to parties with you. But as soon as things get serious, they disappear. They find it easier to ignore you than to cope with your suffering. Since they secretly don't care enough to be there when it matters, they don't want to be involved in your troubles. Convenience isn't the goal of genuine support, let's be absolutely honest. Being there when it's difficult, uncomfortable, and the last thing you want to do is the key. When someone leaves you, when you need them the most, it's not simply rudeness, it's a clear indication of where you are in their life. Your problems aren't worth my time, they are saying without using words. I recall being devastated to learn that the people I had previously supported, through their breakups, family conflicts, and professional setbacks, could not bring themselves to do the same for me. The awakening was not a nice one. However, I also had to realize that not everyone who smiles in your face is actually on your side. The profound takeaway is that any lasting connection is built on support. Being together when things are going well is easy, but how individuals react when things go wrong is the true measure of a relationship. Not only is someone failing you if they leave you when you need them, but they are also demonstrating to you that they were never truly there in the first place. Instead, allow their absence to improve you rather than make you resentful. Sort those who don't deserve a presence in your life by using it as a filter. The relationships you should cultivate and treasure are with those who genuinely matter, those who stay, check in, and show up even when it's inconvenient. Ultimately, life is too short to waste on friends who aren't always there. Instead of just enjoying the brightness, surround yourself with individuals who will support you through the storm. Because you've found something valuable when you come across those infrequent people who remain when things get tough. Furthermore, people who vanish should be left go because they have already revealed their actual selves to you. 7. Behind your back, they spread rumors about you. The social poison that spreads more quickly than wildfire and has the power to quickly destroy relationships is gossip. The problem with gossip is that it's never as harmless as people think. When someone you think of as a friend talks behind your back, they are intentionally undermining your relationship, your reputation, and your trust. They are not merely sharing a harmless story. And let's face it, regardless of how cordial they appear in front of you, it's obvious that they don't respect you when they gossip about you. I've been the target of rumors before, and I can assure you that it's one of the most painful situations. I once confided in someone I believed to be a close friend about a private matter. I trusted this individual to keep things private, and I needed to vent and release some of the weight I was carrying. But within days, distorted and inflated reports of that conversation began to circulate. It was similar to a game of telephone, except instead of the message simply disappearing, it was being used against me. My vulnerability had been used by the person I trusted to amuse others. The contentious reality is that those who spread rumors about you are engaging in a power struggle rather than merely expressing their frustrations or worries. Through gossip, they can denigrate you while promoting themselves without having to face you head-on. It is poisonous, manipulative, and cowardly. They are harming not only your reputation, but also the trust that is the cornerstone of every genuine connection. To be clear, if someone gossips about you to others, they will also gossip about you to others. It's a trend rather than an isolated incident. Someone who enjoys spilling the tea on others suddenly stops talking around you. I've witnessed this happen too many times to count. You know what? When you are not there, they are most likely spilling your tea. Because it is carried out in secret, without providing you with an opportunity to defend yourself, or even to understand what is being said, it is the worst type of betrayal. Here's where it gets truly personal. I recall going up to the friend who had been spreading rumors about me, expecting an explanation, or at least an apology. Rather, they dismissed it as idle conversation and like it was nothing. The problem is that gossip is never innocuous. Simply put, it's a betrayal, and it speaks much more about the person spreading it than it does about the target.